Okay, let's start it off. All right,
Oh yeah,
so
you got source options.
this is the first ever State of the Exile podcast. This is our first episode. It's a pilot. I would like to welcome everybody here. I appreciate you tuning in. Before we get going, I want to thank GGG for providing this awesome game and the endless amount of content that they provide to us, endless amount of builds we can make. Secondly, I'd like to thank Twitch.tv for allowing us to do something like this. You know, Twitch is a great experience. You know, it gets a lot of people's names out there. It's a lot of fun, and people can learn the game via Twitch. So thank you, Twitch. Also, I'd like to thank any mods in the channel for keeping the channel clean. And with that being said, let's get this going. A little bit about ourselves. I'm Zeno Genius. I've been playing all sorts of games most of my life. Played a lot of WoW for 5 to 6 years. I was a top 5 US guild. I switched over to Path of Exile probably full time, on and off, you know, mostly full time though, about a year and a half ago. And I've currently died 3 times. Well, high level characters, I've died 3 times. And so far, Invasion, it's a lot of fun, but it's risk for reward. Maybe just the risk. We also have Hegemony TV in here if you want to tell us about yourself at all, Hedgie.
Hey guys, it's Hegemony. Mostly known for my Batman Witch Wander, level 100. I've currently died in Invasion at level 70 due to alt-tabbing. I made the classic mistake of alt-tabbing and dying to a boss. I'm back at 51, and I'm here to do this podcast and share my thoughts with the new league and the new patch.
And then we have Colby Cheese. If you want to give an introduction to yourself as well, Colby, what do you do?
What do I do? Well, I've always been a big YouTuber. Came over from the league scene, but Path of Exile's got me hooked. And currently doing the hardcore stuff. I actually just had a pretty painful death today, this morning, right before all of this. It was like I think my 4th death, but I was level 72, farming some piety, had like 200 rarity, and yeah, it's the 3rd death to the same boss, little Rain of Arrows, titty biatch. Yeah, so. But yeah, that's what I do. A lot of streaming, a lot of YouTube stuff, and trying to help out the community as much as I can with builds and things like that.
All right, so I'm going to do a brief overview of what we're going to be discussing today. If you noticed on the side there, we each are going to have 20-minute segments. I'll be discussing 2 unique builds around the same skill. Colby Cheese is going to be talking about the passive tree as well as the current meta and invasion and ambush. And Hegemony is going to be discussing the corrupted areas, Vaal gems, Vaal orbs, things along that nature. And at the very end, we're going to do a 20-minute Q&A. And that is a live question and answer session where you guys, at this point in time, until the end of the stream, ask questions. When, for instance, at the very beginning, it's Hegemony's going to be taking off. Colby and I will be taking note of your questions. Anyone, and any questions in quality. Try to keep them. Don't ask dumb questions. Long story short. Anyways, we're going to be keeping track of them, and at the very end, we're going to be, we'll give you a shout out and say your question live and go through from there. So with that being said, the first segment here is going to be Hegemony TV. And go ahead.
Hey guys, what's up? I just wanted to go over some of the stuff, the new content mainly. As far as the Vaal gems and Vaal orbs, what do I think about them and how it's going to affect the economy, the long-term game. The Vaal orbs I found to be quite the stir in the economy because it brought a whole new definition of what perfect means perfect. I mean, I've seen crazy implicit mods like additional curse, leech, elemental leech. I mean, build enabling, overall enhancing of the power of your character. And I think this brings a new economic shift because people are doing these to their legacy items, and their legacy items are worth hundreds of exalts. They're like worth 3 to 5 times more than the original or the post-nerf version. And I've seen like a bunch of legacy combs just being completely nerfed into garbage. 6-link shavs. I mean, the payouts are very, very devastating. Which I think it's good. Overall, it's a good way to get rid of those legacy uniques that everyone seems to complain about, and also I mean, if you like to roll the dice, I mean, you can greatly enhance it. Obviously, I don't recommend this to the the novice gamer or somebody who doesn't have expendable currency. But overall, very, very cool, interesting way to use currency. Not being able to modify it and the devastating drawbacks there are behind it. I think it's a good balance of the game. It does make the game, very. It takes the whole grindiness to another level. Getting your gems to 2020 and then Veil Orbing it is definitely cool. As far as the Veil Gems, I've seen some cool uses for Veil Gems, mainly with stuff like Spectral Throw or Power Siphon. Building around, continually using them as like a clear out, mechanic, and just continuing just to push those levels. However, long term in Merciless, I've still yet to see something that's like successfully used it to where you can sustain it. Obviously, there's a big drawback when you get to higher content levels because you need many more kills to be able to use them. But over the time, I think that GG will find a good balance to make them viable, worth using. I mean, they didn't spend all this time, coding this kind of feature and just nobody using it. So at the early game, they do have some kind of significant impact. Late game, I mean, we'll see. Probably future podcasts that we do. We plan on doing these things bi-monthly, so tune in. You'll be able to keep up with how the game is shifting.
I have a question for you, Hedgie. Do you think on Reddit today I saw the Stone Blazoir with it was corrupted obviously from a Vaal Orb, and it gave +1 to additional curses basically. Do you think the probability or the chance of you having 5 curses is game breaking? I mean, obviously you can now. Or what does this open up, being able to get +1 curse on the neck rather than using something like the Doge's Ring?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's very, very strong. It's definitely something I'm going to be trying. I definitely want the curses. However, when I feel like you get into that pentacurse area that, it's a little excessive, you honestly spend so much time preparing, and it starts to teeter out. I mean, you have your 2 curses that you want to use, Enfeeble, Temp Change, and then you have your damage curses. So say you're using something like Searing Bond or Flame Blast, you want to use like Flammability, Vulnerability for the dots, and Elemental Weakness. When you start to add up more curses, it starts to become more group-based. So if you're a solo-based player, I think the Quad Curse is probably a good place to balance your character at. Anything more, and then you start to run into groups, and then the problem with running in groups is you often take down the packs very, very fast to where you don't even get that Pentacurse action. So I think Quad Curse is in a good spot. After, every curse after that, I think it's a bit much for how fast you're going to end up clearing. But yeah, good question.
Do you also think, I had a question regarding Ambush. With Ambush and all those high quality gems, you were saying earlier that the Vaal Orb, you have to get that level 2020. However, now with the 19% gems, or even you could probably get 20% gems out of those strong boxes, do you think this is going to make the Vaal Orb stronger in Ambush versus Invasion?
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. Yeah, that I definitely think is the case. Vaal Orb is definitely a good standard league and new league currency orb. However, we're really, really struggling in Invasion, especially with all the difficulties and the new corrupted areas. Which brings me to my next thing, the corrupted areas. Do I think they're worth it? From my experience, they've been relatively easy, depending upon what boss is inside. It kind of frustrates me that the reward is quite minimal, and the mods, I wish that you could roll the mod on the actual corrupted zone. You know how you guys can dump currency into the lockbox? I wish you could do that with the corrupted zone, because it's more often than not you'll get like a temp chains, or a -24 max or something along those lines, where it's not worth doing. And honestly, good content is the content that's you're going to make the decision of, this is very, very risky, but the reward is very, very good. So overall, the corrupted areas, they're very interesting. It's definitely a new dynamic to the game. However, I do think that they can improve it with maybe rolling currency on it, maybe changing the zone, because they're not that common to begin with. And this one is also going to lead into my next thing that I wanted to cover, which is the risk and reward factor. When I look at the leagues and the league design, I see ambush, where I see all these crazy boxes. You know, every item that comes out of this box comes fully linked, or you're going to get a crap load of gems or a crap load of maps, and they're all going to be like same type of quality. This is insane. Like, it's an insane perk. It's almost like this kind of perk should be in Invasion, because we're the ones that are constantly sending our characters to standard leagues, and you know, the rip factor and the economy is very hard to get hit the ground running. I feel like the risk is very, very high in Invasion, and the reward is much too much in Ambush. I'm not trying to take away stuff that's relatively fun, but I feel like the item progression in Ambush leagues are going to get to be crazy, and I would expect to see a 50 kill Atsiri much sooner than Invasion. Honestly, feel like the Atsiri kills, I mean, we're lucky to see 50 people that kill it by the end of the 4 month. I mean, it's getting to that degree where our league is very, very non-rewarding. It is very fun. I'm not saying that this is not fun. I just think that Grindy Gear can balance it out to where one of those deadly, devastating, unique bosses, they can have different kinds of rarity on them and make them much more rewarding. I think if they do that, it's a step in the right direction. But overall, the rewards are definitely lacking. I mean, you guys have seen the rip factor. It's just to the max, and the economy is having a very, very hard time just to even get going, because the amount of deaths and contributions to standard that we're seeing.
I will say though, the whole risk for reward, it's like a double-edged sword. Yes, you're not getting reward, however, it's keeping the economy low. At the end of Nemesis, everything kind of snowballed out of control in terms of Exalt prices, but right now everything's got a nice cheap price on it, and I foresee foreseeing it staying that way for the most part because of the risk reward factor. I do think that they need to make at least bosses drop at least one rare, because they are a pain in the butt, some of them, and the reward might need to be a little bit higher, but at the same time, it seems like Ambush is more of a crafting league, whereas Invasion is definitely like a super challenge league. That's my
I mean,
take.
It's the trick of balancing. Like, you implement all this content, but if players are choosing to skip it, then you are not successful at implementing that new content. Like, it's got to be like a decision that people actually try, instead of, oh, this guy is too hard, let's just skip it, let's remake the instance. That's not very good content. Good content is, oh my god, that boss is scary, are we equipped to handle it? Let's do it. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be worth our time. And it really pains me to see when people are just like, that person is not worth my time, I'm just going to run around it. And that's not a very huge feat, just to be able to run around something, but yeah, it's definitely something that needs a little attention to spice up the league. And yeah, do you have any words to say, Colby, about any of those things?
Yeah, the bosses themselves are pretty fun overall, and I like them. They are extremely overtuned. I mean, some of them feel like they are extremely overtuned. Mostly the one that brings down the little titty biatch that brings down the rain. That's probably the most dangerous one that I've seen personally. I've died to it 3 times. I've seen other people die to it. There's really no time to react. There's another one that throws out traps and does freezing pulse. And if you don't see the boss and she's already thrown out a trap, you can pretty much get one-shot by that one. Those are the 2 that stand out the most to me as being a little bit overtuned. If they can just like bring those down a little bit, at least outside of maps, I think that would be nice, because the other ones are pretty tough and they can kill you very quickly, but you're not going to get one shot off screen by them. And then some other little small changes, like the little Asakata guy not looking like a mob, and or not look like a rare boss. So there's a few changes. Overall, I don't think that it's too bad. I like a lot of the bosses and I like the challenge, but yeah, I would like to see some changes to just getting one shot by stuff off screen.
I know personally I've died off screen. Like I'd even see the freeze pulse trapper and she dumped that ice storm on me. I was nearly cap cold res, and even with LE weakness I was nearly cap cold res and I insta died. And I completely agree. I do feel that some bosses are overtuned, but that comes with every new patch. You know, expect patch notes to change some of these. But at the same time, there's a lot of underwhelming bosses, like the Fire Fury mimic boss that spams Firestorm. She's a joke. Oh no, Tem Chains, you know? So...
Yeah. And I would like to see that where maybe they have some more rewarding bosses on top of having some dangerous ones. You know, for example, we had Inner Treasure as one of the Nemesis mods in the past league, and I don't know why we can't have like one rare one that's gonna be like you know, drop some really cool stuff when you kill it, and it's kind of like you're, oh yay, finally one that's, you know, if I kill this, it's actually rewarding, because you've got the risk and reward with the chest. The only reward for killing the boss is, well, it's out of my way, and you know, it's like, okay, there's no real reward for killing it. It's just dangerous.
There is a reward.
I would like to be given a reason to actually try and fight them, other than just getting the challenge done the first time.
Okay.
Right. That's why I find myself doing them just to get the challenge out of the way, and then, you know, it's not worth my time after that.
What's that? Vaal detonate dead? Well, see you later. I'm running by you. So with that being said, we're going to get into Colby Cheese's breakdown, and he's going to be discussing the current passive tree changes, as well as the ambush versus invasion meta, to go further into detail with that. So Colby, what do you think are some good passive tree changes or negative ones that need to be changed yet again?
Well, overall, I'll talk about the changes in general, kind of discuss what my thoughts are. I like to just sit here and go through, and I'll theorycraft pretty much all day, even when I'm not streaming. I just like to pull up the passive trees and I'll play around with it. So what I've noticed so far is, you know, obviously we had a huge rework on the Marauder, and I think that's really awesome. You can see some really nice changes for regen-based builds. Of course, that's going to be like Righteous Fire, and overall just being extremely tanky. Once you have something like a Comb's Heart, you're going to see people with like massive amounts of life regen. It's going to be really hard to deal with that. I mean, it's going to be hard to die unless you're just getting one shot, of course, by some of these crazy bosses. Also, it's great changes for the Marauders racing. It's an amazing racing start. If you've taken a look at it, there's a lot of great damage nodes and a couple of life nodes. All of that is very close by. As far as like some of the actual like main nodes, like we've seen Vaal Pact was like a huge one that got changed around, and so overall my thoughts on that one, I haven't seen a lot of people actually using Vaal Pact yet, and we haven't had a lot of testing, but from looking at it and you know, theory crafting in general, I feel like they made it so that you really need to spec into Life Leech heavily in order for that to work out. So you're gonna, you know, I think it's still viable. It's going to be a great skill, since especially you can still use your life potions, but you're going to see people needing things like either 6% life leech ammo, or they're going to have to go for Carnage Heart, things like that on top of just what they normally would have done.
I was reading a thread about life leech, and it said that you need to do with equal level 20 life on hit and life leech gem respectively, and that's your only life leech. You need to do at least 500 damage on hit, not DPS, to equal the same of that what life on hit can provide for you now, since the changes.
Yeah. That's what I've heard, so I'm not sure. You're going to have to do some, I know the math has been done there. I haven't seen it in practice yet. I've seen a few people using life on hits with certain spells, but overall I haven't seen a lot of people really mess with that, because it seems like, you know, at the start of the league everyone's doing spellcasters since they don't have a lot of gear requirement. I did play with a guy who was, you know, doing fine without the, you know, the life leech. He's using life on hit, but overall I think life leech, you're just gonna have to really spec into high amounts of it, and the math you had there was like, I think based on only 2% life leech, right? So
it's just
so
off
the idea
the
is
gem.
that
Just off the gem alone, without any on gear.
On the gem itself, okay.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I think you're gonna have to really spec into it pretty heavily, and then for people who are like spellcasters using it, it probably is somewhat of a nerf. I'm gonna have to, you know, again, see some more of it in practice, because sometimes whenever you hear about it, it's like it sounds bad, but when you start using it, it's a little bit different. So I still want to do a little bit more testing, but overall, I kind of like the change in terms of like being able to use potions with Vaal Pact. Yeah, it's a nerf for CI, but you know, CI has its other benefits in other areas. So overall, it's kind of like a, you know, it nerfs some things, but it buffs others. I guess that's the direction they want to take it. But then you got I really love the change that they made for the top part of the tree, where they gave a lot of the spellcasters way more elemental damage. They pretty much doubled a lot of the stuff over in the shadow tree, which is really needed. Like the shadows are extremely weak in general in terms of comparing it to the other starts. So you can see that they got like doubled spell damage and elemental and lots more life on some of their nodes there. I think that I'm really excited about the changes to the Scion. Even though it was a nerf overall to that whole efficiency area, taking out some of those nodes opens up pathing through and actually opens up more efficient options elsewhere in the tree without saying, well, I have to go into that Scion life wheel. Now you can actually take a few nodes and go through the evasion wheel. For example, I was doing a trapper build, and instead of going over the left side and taking up that life wheel, I actually went through the evasion nodes, and you can take, expeditious munitions, which is right by there, and you can run around and grab a bunch of other things through IR and mind over matter and all that stuff that trappers actually like to rely on. So overall, I like the skill changes on the tree, and I know they said they still have a few things coming for the top 3 classes for Templar, Witch, and Shadow. At least that's what I thought I read in a post. So overall, I feel like they're going in the right direction here with the changes.
I have a question for you, Colby. Obviously, Life Leech got a big hit, but you could still make it work because there's a lot of Life Leech on gear. There's still Vaal Pack options. How do you feel the Mana Leech gem is now? Because there were some caster builds out there that used it. How do you feel about Mana Leech as a whole?
I don't know, I've never liked that gem, to be honest. I'd rather just use Blood Magic if I'm gonna use a whole skill slot for getting mana back. I don't think the gem gives that much mana back, and then it's just too easy to go for Eldritch Battery and get the mana there. So I mean, it's an okay gem, and maybe use it for leveling stuff, but overall I feel like the fact that you kind of need that for a lot of skills, or that you would need that for a lot of skills, as opposed to getting the mana regen and Eldritch Battery and stuff like that, it kind of takes away from your links that you already have, especially if you're limiting yourself to a 4 or 5 link. There's so many more options that would be better than using the Mana Leech gem, but that's my personal thoughts on it. I'm sure some people like using it, but especially with the way, if it was like more of if the Mana Leech gem gave like a faster mana back, rather than the rather than being locked to the percentage of your total mana, if it gave like a more of a flat amount of mana or something like that, I think it would be way more powerful. Because currently, if you're using Mana Leech gem, you probably don't have a huge mana pool, so even that small amount of leech that you're getting is still not going to be enough. From what I found,
there was ideas out there now that with the Mana Leech, perhaps making mana on hit, but that's a whole nother thing. Thieves Torment's already very good, so I mean,
exactly,
it would be hard for them to balance that out.
Yeah, well, Thieves Torment is a very large amount, and it's also not affected by the damage effectiveness, so I think they could balance it, but it doesn't have to be mana on hit. It's more like not affected by your max mana, maybe like a percentage that is based on some, I don't know. That's probably going too far into theory crafting on that end, but that's what I think would make it better, is if it wasn't locked into, like, using the gem itself is not locked into that particular type of mana regen, the way that it's working right now.
All right.
I wanted to talk about a subject and then get your 2 opinions on it. I wanted to talk about the people that are saying, oh, invasion is too hard, it's too impossible. I kind of feel like this is like a shift towards the meta, because people are so used to playing an Onslaught and Nemesis and being in control of the engagements, and no longer having that that element of surprise. I feel like the game is in a very good spot. The difficulty is, and the risks are there. It's preventing those people from just bright beak, leap slamming, fast attack, just all over the place to get where they need to go. Now there's actual, risk. So the game is definitely being slowed down. And I feel like I want to know each one of your comments on, I'm going to say path of defense. Like you're getting to explore the sides of the tree where, you were currently or previously not, even exploring like the defense, the keystones, and really pushing your defense to the test to keep you safe. I mean, we saw early on with the races, people were just banging out those levels, playing how they normally do. They're playing at the highest skill levels, and they're realizing, oh, you can't do this anymore, or this shit's not working. I'm getting, raped. I'm gonna have to tone it down. I'm gonna have to think about this, second guess, what I was doing before and how it's going to translate into, this league. I wanted to get both of your thoughts on that.
My opinions on it is, you're gonna call a hardcore league hardcore. They did a good job doing that. You only live once, right? So before in Nemesis, you wouldn't always pick up those little 2% block nodes right away. You wouldn't always pick up those 0.4% life leech nodes or regen nodes right away. Now you find yourself, should I get this or should I get damage? I think in a hardcore scenario, you should be getting more defense. The reward factor isn't there so much, but the challenge is there. So I think they're going down the right path, at least from my experience in Invasion. And then the people who say melee is unplayable right now, I would completely disagree. I would say melee is where it needed to be. People got used to the dual Strikebringer of Rain builds. People got used to having all their gear at the end of Nemesis where melee just wiped the floor. I think melee is balanced. I think spellcasters still need a slight buff, but other than that, that's my opinions on the meta. Colby, what do you have to say?
Overall, I actually really enjoy it. I'm a big fan of games like Dark Souls. And the reason I like the challenge so much is that it feels so much more rewarding when you do get past it and you get to the end game. Now that I've been to the end game, I've been farming piety and stuff, it actually gets a little bit easier. And this is the way the game has been even before Invasion, is that the game is tough, you don't have gear, and once you get to the end game, you have more life, you've got more of your nodes together, you got your correct resist and stuff. And for the most part, you don't have to worry about getting completely destroyed anymore, and then you can buy leveling gear for your new characters. And I'm doing this right now. I just bought a couple of pieces of leveling gear, and I'm just blasting through the content. Nothing's really bothering me. The real difficulty is for basically doing new characters and self-found. And we've already talked about some things being a little bit overtuned in terms of the bosses, but in those particular bosses, like one-shotting you, I think that the game is in a great position because I love being able to say, okay, now I really need to look at getting a little bit more block, a little bit more evasion, because right now my character, I keep dying to this one boss, correct? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure out a way to counter that. Maybe I'm going to get Ondars, I'm going to do a build around that, and there's other ways to counter it, of course, but it just allows me to really push myself in my skill level. And the one thing that I will say is that the league is definitely not designed for casual players at all, so that could be like a downfall for them. But then they have ambush. I think that
Exactly.
You're going to push away some players, sure, because they would like to play the hardcore leagues, just way too hard for them, and I've heard so many people rage quit. But being a hardcore player, I think I would have a lot of fun in ambush, and I'm definitely going to play ambush because there's a challenge for getting level 90 there. So I think they wanted to encourage people to play both leagues. I think they're trying to get rid of the whole if you play standard, you're a scrub core noob. It's like it's the same game, but there's different challenges. So I think that it's in a good spot. If you want that challenge, it's there. If you want to just have fun and goof off and get 20,000 items in one little chest, then go play ambush. I like both. I like both ways that they've done it. So I think people just need to look at it in that way.
So we're all in agreement that the difficulty, the shift from going from super fast, efficient, clear speed, as like, oh shit, I need to be prepared for the worst. We're all in agreement that the difficulty change is fine, but the rewards could be better.
A lot of people play action RPGs for two reasons: the difficulty and the loot. GGG provided us two separations between the two where you can get the best of both worlds without having to choose. Without having to squeeze them both together in one league and completely breaking the economy. So I think they did a great job really sitting down and be like, when I played D2 back in the olden days, I loved it for the loot. I loved running around my MF, sorceress. Well, some people are like, well, I loved how fun hardcore was. Nothing like doing 2 level 90 duels and losing your character. You know, I think they did a great job with the 2 leagues, and I'm in complete agreement with it. So, with that being said, Colby, do you have anything else to add before we go into the next segment?
I wanted to just like talk about some of the interesting Vaal. You know, you talked earlier about the Vaal gems, and you know, some of them kind of are weak. I did want to talk about some of the really nice combos that I have seen that people are using very effectively, both that I've seen personally while leveling and on some videos. If you want to hear it.
Yeah, go for it, man.
All right, so I noticed there's a lot more people doing this now, I think, but leveling up, you can kill a lot of bosses even without speccing directly into like spell damage. I've seen people just toss in a like an LMP and a spark and just completely one-shot pretty much every boss once they have the charges with that spark combo. Some people are doing it with Vaal Fireball as well. It's a little bit less effective, I think. But I think that that's one cool idea, is that once people start figuring this thing out, there are ways to get through the content a little bit better by using these Vaal gems to just like completely wreck those bosses that normally would be really hard for you. I've seen some, apparently LMP Burning Arrow is a good one for bow stuff. And at high levels, I've been using, I was leveling with a guy who had Vaal Cyclone, and we would just run up when we're doing piety runs, and you know that right before the portal there's that huge area of mobs. He would just start Vaal Cycloning, and he would just destroy everything and suck in the whole screen, and I would detonate stuff while he's doing that. We did it in a couple of maps like Tropical Island. You can clear out a huge area of the map and almost completely refill it. So with the right setups, I think some of these Vaal gems are actually very useful, if only for utility. For example, like Rain of Arrows, just to lock down some of those bosses that are chasing after you. You can lock them down for, what, like 4 seconds or something like that, and so you can run away or get some extra DPS in. So I think there's definitely ways to look at these gems. Some of them definitely not that impressive, sure, but I think they did a good job of some of them being very useful, and they definitely have that ultimate skill feel to them.
All right, with that being said, the Vaal Fireball, if you link it with GMP and then Trap and then some sort of added chaos damage, you open up with Bear Trap, lock them in place, and then throw the trap, and they literally get hit by every single fireball and one-shot them. It's crazy. It's like
exactly. That was my plan. I was actually leveling Vaal Fireball, Trap, GMP, and Conk Effect is what I was going to try out.
Conk Effect.
And,
Conk Effect. Jesus Christ.
So, but I just didn't get around to actually seeing it go through, you know, fruition since I died this morning. So I'm sure we'll see some videos of people using it effectively. I was hoping to do it, but we'll get around to it eventually.
Surprise! All right. With that being said, before we get into our next segment, I would just like to say we're about halfway through our podcast right now. So thank you everybody tuning in. Again, thank you GGG and Twitch for allowing us to do this, and thanks to the mods moderating chat. With that being said, we have 6 more microtransactions to give away. We have 1 more at the end of the podcast. We have 2 more at the end of the podcast. When I go live tonight, I'll be giving away mine. Colby Cheese has 2 to give away how he decides to, and he'll let you know how he's going to do that on his stream. And Hegemony TV, he's got 1 more left to give away, and he will let you know how to do that via his stream as well. So stay tuned. We have 6 more microtransactions to give away, and we're going to start up the next segment, my segment. I definitely would like some positive criticism behind this, but I want to prove that Vaal gems are good and can be very useful. So with that being said, let me just whip out some monitor capture here. The 2 builds I have planned right now, I have 1 planned for evasion, 1 planned for armor. Let's discuss the first one. This is a Burning Arrow build, and the Burning Arrow has always been a gem that it's used but not used a lot. And there's mainly because, you know, like things like Burning Arrow, the quality on it it's lackluster compared to other gems, you know. Frenzy will give you more damage, but with the Vaal Burning Gem, it allows you to use a more effective builds with Burning Arrow. Let's describe Burning Arrow. The difference between Burning Arrow and Vaal is you get 30% extra damage as fire, not conversion damage, extra damage. So it's like a mini added fire gem. And Vaal Burning Arrow is 60%, so you get an additional 30 there. Also, the ignite chance, let's say level 15 is a pretty good level, is about 70%, whereas Burning Arrow at level 15 is 42%. Now, Vaal Burning Arrow is pretty much like a fire discharge when it hits. You shoot the burning arrow, boom! I wanted to make a build using it because I think it's very strong and it's underrated. And right here's my character I have. And this character I wanted to show how Pierce affects the Burning Arrow gem. And now, with Vaal Burning Arrow, the initial hit will still do the explosion. If using LMP, you'll have 3 explosions. But with Pierce, it allows it so that you'll have multiple explosions. Now keep in mind, this isn't crazy gear. I just hopped on standard, threw some stuff together. But if you throw up a Pierce here and shoot it, you know, that one didn't actually pierce, damn it. You can hit multiple targets with it. And the benefit of this is the soul cost on Vaal Burning Arrow Gem is very low. In normal difficulty, it only costs a big whopping 12 souls, and in Merciless it costs 24. I mean, it's beautiful. You can make a lot of interesting builds with it. And obviously my bow is very weak in this. I just wanted to display how Pierce works with it. So let me hop out. So here are the 2 builds I have planned. I had made one with a Ranger, an invasion-based one if you're an invasion fan, and I also made one with a Duelist. Straight up Duelist would go IR. It would pick up Iron Reflexes, and then work into some armor, the newly buffed armor tree, as well as getting Resolute Technique. It would be using blood magic, whereas the Ranger would be focusing on the Pierce, as well as the evasion, and picking up some other bow nodes. The great thing about the evasion build right now is with cast on damage taken and mortal call with increased duration, and then these improved skill durations, when you take that big physical hit, you'll be immune for at least 7 seconds with this combination. If they're quality, probably upwards near 9. And that's just in a cast on damage taken, not a self-cast. If you'd like to, I'm going to provide links to both of these. And the really interesting thing about these builds is they released 2 new quivers that can really help out. And the first one for the Duelist build, right here, it's a block quiver, and it gives you physical damage armor, which is already what we want. Get that projectile speed, which is, it's okay. Block stun recovery, you know, when you read that, you're like, why? Well, at the very bottom, it gives you 21% chance to block and 14% chance to spell block. And then you get increased projectile damage. So this is the quiver I would end up using with the Duelist variation of the spec, you know, the armor variation. And then they provided a brand new Pierce quiver. And this thing is just insane. I'm probably more leaning towards this being used with the Vaal gem, because the very bottom thing, very bottom stat is projectile damage is increased by the arrow pierce chance. Well, you get 10% from this bow. Projectile weakness quality can provide upwards near, what, 60%, if not more. You have the 35% in the tree. You know, you have the Pierce Gem. Pierce Gem actually becomes a viable option now. With this being said, getting over 100% Pierce is actually a pretty silly thing, but it would actually increase your damage. Would I go for the Pierce Gem right away? Probably not. You know, it's just you know, theory crafting at best. Also, this provides a big chunk of evasion in life. It's a beautiful quiver. We have yet to see the CI quiver yet, because it seemed they made one for armor, one for evasion, and one for energy shield. Hopefully when the energy shield one drops, we can make some good theory crafting builds behind it. But that's what I gotta say about my 2 versions of the build. If you guys would like me to do a full build breakdown, I could do it later on stream. But for the sake of this, what do you guys think about the whole Vaal Burning Arrow gem? Do you think it could be viable?
Yeah, it sounds cool. I want to see it in the works. Level up the team.
How about you, Colby? Let's hear it.
It actually sounds pretty interesting. I'm curious if it's gonna be. Let's see. You're gonna have to use. You know, you're gonna have to get those souls up initially. So, what are you planning on doing for your, you know, your usual DPS when you're not using the Burning Arrow?
Using Burning Arrow, you can make a single target.
Just use a regular Burning Arrow.
There you go.
And you're just continuing to pierce.
Right, and it scales very well with added fire as well as the elemental nodes. And the cool thing about it as well is it stacks 3 times. So it's not like I use Vaal Burning Arrow, now I got to get more souls. It could stack up to 3 times. So it only costs 72 souls to do that, and that's slightly more than just to get 1 stack of a current gem. And then in normal difficulty, it only takes 36 souls to get a 3 stack, and that's a joke to do.
Yeah, I've been using it actually on my current bow ranger, which I just started right before the stream. I'll put on LMP and use it in a sec, and I'll probably have some Pierce stuff later. So, you know, I'm not going to be doing your build, but it's definitely a really strong ability as it is. But and burn builds in general are really nice. So once you can get that, you know, like if you're proliferating burns through things and stuff like that, it's pretty exciting. Like burn builds, fire builds in general are really strong in this league from what I've seen so far. People doing all kinds of fire stuff, and so it'd be interesting to see a viable bow-based fire build, just like, you know, other than explosive arrow.
Exactly, and you won't even need the chance to ignite gem at all. That's the beauty behind it too.
True.
Would you be using Purity of Fire and Ondars to?
Well, with evasion, you don't even need the Purity of Fire, but obviously in the duelist spec, you would need something like that. Yes, or you can use just a ruby against an elemental pack. You know, ruby flask. But Ondars Guile completely negates any need to ever worry about reflect at all, both through elemental and physical bow specs. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah, don't be using that with Alliance Clear.
No, yeah.
Exactly. That's the main thing you want to keep in mind.
Well, the thing is, you could go crit with a Harbinger, or you could just go standard pure physical with a lot of life, go tanky version if you're doing evasion. But I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Just the fact that the explosion works with Pierce, that's just endless possibilities of fun right there. So with that being said, I think we're going to transition into our Q&A. We got a lot of time left right now, so I guess we could spend a little bit more on Q&A. And at the end of that, I will be taking down the podcast, and we'll be doing the rest of the, at least the rest of the podcast giveaways. We have 2 of those, so hang tight. I appreciate everybody coming in. All right, let's see what we got for questions here. Keep asking your questions, guys. So the first one, if whoever wants to answer this, or each person can, we got Wantang Wantan no Giku. I totally slaughtered your name, man. Do you think Orb granting a passive point would be broken if it was as rare as a mirror, for example? What are your takes on that, Colby?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. What did you say?
Oh, okay, sorry. Well, do you think an orb dropping with the same rarity of a mirror that granted a passive skill point would be game breaking by any means?
Oh, like it granted like a permanent extra passive?
Exactly.
And that you can like continue using?
No, just one use and that's it. Here's a free skill point. And it has the same rarity as
my
mirror.
answer to that is yes.
I am completely agreed.
They balance the game.
It'd be like everyone would have to get that type thing.
Not only that, but there's some people out there that RMT. There's also people out there with endless exalts in Standard League, Hegemony. So with that being said, those people would control that market.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I don't like that particular idea. I mean, I don't mind them like releasing more crazy orbs that do certain things with your character rather than items, but that particular idea is a little bit not so good.
It's the game would have to be balanced around people accessing those. And when they design these trees and they design these keystones, they're made so that you have to pick and choose and not just like grab everything, everything and do whatever you want. That becomes way too powerful and way too much of a balancing scheme that they would have to do.
Perhaps
what I wouldn't mind seeing.
Go ahead. What's your
is some kind of orb that you use on maybe like certain passive skills like on the tree, and it will potentially like a Vaal orb potentially like corrupts one of your passives and maybe makes it something different. Then you would have to use like a regret or something to get rid of it, or maybe it just fucks your character. I don't know. That could be something really hilarious and weird, but I'm not sure if that was like an expensive orb that you couldn't just constantly do it over and over, and then if you messed it up, you would have to regret out of it. Essentially, and maybe it only worked on certain Keystone passives. That's the only thing in that particular area of ideas that I can see being cool. Like crafting your skill tree rather than crafting an item.
There was it was a Reddit post about 3-4 months ago about making an orb where you choose the link where it goes in, but making it extremely rare. So if you get that 5 link on a 6 socket, and then you get this orb, you can finish off your 6 link, but making it just as rare as a mirror, or maybe just slightly rare as a mirror. And I think that was a pretty interesting idea.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds interesting, but it also sounds like a programming nightmare.
Yes, I agree with that one.
A lot of work. Xenon40, he asks, how do you sustain a caster in the late game without Life Leech? If it's not possible, do you need Veil Pack plus Life Leech Gem to survive any crit-based caster? You guys want to take that?
Yeah, I could do that one. With the recent changes with Life Leech, it really did hurt casters, in my opinion. There is no spell leech currently in the game. I mean, other than a lucky Vaal Orb. And, with the way leech changes, you need to hit harder and pretty much attack, less as much. There's really fast hitting abilities such as Spark. Life Leech really gimp you on. However, I still think casters are stronger because they're getting more damage, so Life Leech will provide them more. I do agree in crit-based builds you're going to need Vaal Pack. It's just like one of the cookie cutters, It just makes sense to do. What do you think, Colby?
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. Like self-casting casters are pretty much in a bad spot, just due to reflect in general. Due to that, right there, you normally would have to go for super high CI with Vaal Pact and things like that. So now you're kind of forced to go totems, but then they nerf totems. So I feel like they want to buff casters' damage, but they don't want to buff their ability to survive, which kind of sucks. So I don't really know. They're in a weird position. You got to do burning. That's why burning builds are so popular, because you can hit like once, and you don't have to hit an extremely high amount, and you can just proliferate a burn. It doesn't even have to be a crit burn. And that's usually really powerful. But then you do something like, if you wanted to do like a non-burning crit Flame Blast, you're gonna kill the hell out of yourself. Especially now that they buff Flame Blast, it's like twice as much damage as it was last patch. And Storm Call is so hard to use for that reason too. It's one shot yourself in that sense. So pretty much the only thing you're left with is you have to get a lot of spell block and high resist. So that's pretty much where you're left at. And just rely on that rather than leeching your life back. So maybe that's what they want you to do. They want you to rely on high amounts, and they also moved up that elemental adaptation closer to the caster tree. So they're saying, hey, casters are the ones who need this. Take this point, get your purities going, and use that to survive rather than trying to use Vaal Pact, Life Leech, and all that stuff. They moved Vaal Pact to more of a life-based ability rather than a CI ability. So I think that's what they want to go for. They want to discourage casters from trying to rely on Life Leech. So that's my thought on that.
There's also the option, people always forget about the elemental resist flasks. They're there for a reason. Use them. If you know you're playing a Flame Blast build, pop that sucker. Get as much fire resistance as you can before flame blasting a huge pack of with elemental reflect. All right, what's the next question we got here? We got
it's I can't see his name very well. It's green, but
Famine?
for Lola says, do you guys see them nerfing or buffing any of the invasion bosses in particular?
I'll kick that question off. Honestly, I don't feel like any of the outside bosses need nerfs. I do think at Siri, there will be a nerf to the zone or to the bosses in general, because when they see the lack of invasion characters even attempting, or I mean we've seen those videos and they're crazy. Even with godly gear, they're quite devastating, and because of the damage boost and the amount of currency and time it's going to take to even get an invasion character capable of taking them down, I think that we will see nerfs to those bosses, just in their damage numbers, not necessarily their speed or their mechanics. But honestly, I feel like all the bosses are in a good spot, with maybe exception of one, like the Rain of Arrows guy. That guy, just, I don't even know if it's Rain of Arrows, it's just like an ice
Rain of Titties and Rain of Arrows.
Yeah,
both
that thing just completely obliterates. Some of their attack speeds are quite fast, so it really will be a devastating affix if you get turbo, or bosses deal damage and haste. Those things I would avoid on map mods, like crazy, because of the fact of running into the boss that are just gonna, they're already fast enough, and to give them frenzy, that's just gonna make it like instant log out, and you're lucky if you're alive when you log out.
Yeah, there are some bosses that are underwhelming, and I do expect them to get buffed. I hope they do, make it more of a challenge. But there are definitely bosses where you're just like, nope, and you just run away, you just run right by them.
Just to piggyback that, I think it's a good idea to have a varying degree of bosses, like bosses that are easy to take down, bosses that are extremely hard. However, the reward needs to be differentiated. Like those easy bosses, they need to drop the loot that they're currently dropping, and those harder bosses need to drop like 10 to 12 rares. Those are quite a feat if you're equipped to handle it.
Yeah,
like
why can't we get ambush mods on the invasion bosses?
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. Like a random ambush mod on an invasion boss would have been freaking sweet.
At least a chance of inner treasure. The fact that you can get
That's
an
a
inner
good
treasure
question.
rare.
Cool.
Before we go into the next one, I must admit that gigantic skeleton. What's his name? Someone chime in.
Sakati.
That guy needs to have his own graphic, and he trucks. He's just ridiculous because you don't know when he's there. Oh well, I just died because I thought.
But
he was
at the same time, you can, like I was kind of in the same thing. But at the same time, you can just like respect every single giant skeleton. Take that extra time to identify. Okay, this is the guy that's Vaal smashing.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna get used to it later on, but
exactly.
even then, I feel like they could just make him a different color or something, But either way, yeah, you'll get used to it eventually. It's just gonna suck at the first, and it's gonna be a little bit disappointing for players when it happens to them.
That's what I love about this meta shift is people are changing the way they play. They're so used to playing the way they've been playing for like almost the past year that all of a sudden I'm going to actually have to think and be like not complacent, just completely be focused and assess the dangers and the potential dangers. I mean, it's going to be a lot slower, but it's okay, as long as it's rewarding.
All right, the next question here was asked by FKUFU. What do you think GGG was going for with the off-screen one-shot mechanics and evasion? So far, it's only resulted in depletion hardcore players out of frustration. Not an additional challenge, or do you think it's just a result of lack of testing? You mind if I kick this one off, guys?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's basically a continuation of what we were just talking about, so go ahead.
Okay, the one-shot mechanics definitely need to be tuned, but maybe you're getting one-shot because you just don't have enough armor, evasion, resistances. That, it's no different than someone dying to desync when they were actually lagging. That's just, it's partly your own fault. But if you are at a good amount of armor, good amount of evasion, or good amount of resistances, capped or just shy of capped, that's when the one-shot becomes a problem. And I do agree. That just piggybacks on what we said earlier.
Just those two bosses mainly, I think.
Exactly. And the people quitting out of frustration, remember, guys, it is a hardcore league. It's got hardcore nature. When you thought of Nemesis, did you have that hardcore feel? Or were you like, well, I can hit 60 no problem without any worries, I felt Nemesis was far too easy, personally, and I'm so happy Invasion is this hard.
Yeah, I mean, it may just be that they're undergeared and they're so used to Nemesis and the other ones, and just playing like I said, they need to change the way they play, change the way they do their builds. That extra defense that you get is now going to feel as rewarding as getting that extra weapon. You're like, oh, I just got Arctic armor, or oh, I just got Anders Guile. That's going to be the emotional high you're going to get when you pick up these defenses. I think that's a good change of, oh, this damage, oh, give me the deeps, it's just like, just give me that defense so I don't die.
Before he was like, I gotta wear hatred over grace. No, sometimes now you're like, I'm gonna wear grace over hatred. Things like that you actually have to think about. I like that.
Especially like venturing into the unknown. You probably should consider something like a self-cast Molten Shell. Whenever you're like, take the time, put it on, level it up. Don't put it on cast and damage taken. That will be a good buffer to give you, some kind of reaction chance. Yeah, so that's some food for thought. If you're really venturing into the unknown and really don't want to die, I mean, there's tools available to you. Immortal Call. I should start seeing a lot more people starting to use endurance charges and Immortal Call. I see all too often when I tune into various streams that they don't even use either of those two abilities, and I think that's a giant mistake. I mean, it's only a matter of time till they get that one shot or that very DPS high intensive burst damage.
Next question. Onwards.
Next question is Korean Gamer says, so is there a strong boss that only drops 6 link items? I can answer that very quickly so we can move on. I think that the ambush box, it just drops, all the items are linked, so if it was a 6 socket, it would be 6 linked. but I think that basically it depends on whatever sockets are dropped. It's going to be linked, but I don't think it drops only 6 links.
All right, here it comes. It's been a while since we even thought about bringing this up, but was Searing Bond already discussed? Was a question asked by Jace, though. Personally, this podcast is about the meta of the game, not the main skill being used. Long story short, the skill gem is, yes, it's overpowered, but also the hype of the gem, you know, all of the people broadcasting it is just making it that much more effective. However, you know, late game, Searing Bond starts to fall off. That's my personal opinion. I will never, ever follow like a standard cookie cutter flavor of the month build because, you know, I've done it before and then it gets nerfed. And then you're stuck with that character and you have to reroll.
I'll weigh on this. Personally, I think Searing Bond, while it's a very good leveling tool, it's just a shift in the meta again. Like last 4 months we saw Path of Spectral Throw. It's one thing after the other. People are going to do what's best to level, and they'll phase out into their other builds. So whether it be Searing Bond, it'll be another ability that everyone agrees, okay, this is the next best thing.
Exactly.
So it's not in a bad position for that Searing Bond is the dominant leveling tool. I mean, last league it was Spectral Throw. So honestly, the versatility, we can make that judgment later on. There are very good drawbacks to Searing Bond. Number one is being able to AoE like fire resistant or elemental resistant, being in a group setting where Searing Bond does not stack. So it would take the person that does the highest Searing Bond, and that person would be doing the damage. If you ran a group with 5 Searing Bonds, you know, bonders, only 1 damage would be going out to the mob. So your overall DPS is very, very poor. At most you would want is, you know, 1 Searing Bond person in your group. So that's a very good and balanced drawback, I think. Could other abilities use some more love? Yes, but if the league ends up being, you know, Path of Searing Bond, then that's when they can end up, you know, making that decision. It's too early on to make that kind of call. And another big drawback of Searing Bond is running solo. And when you're running solo, which is ideal because, you know, anybody else that you tag on with, you know, more Searing Bond is just gonna gimp your group. You're running with less auras, less targets for aggro. So I think it is in a good spot. You have much more responsibility on your end and not others to keep you alive with a Searing Bond spec. But that is a good question.
I can answer it really quickly so we can move on. Basically, I think that, yeah, same thing you guys said. Searing Bond, okay position, that everyone's doing it, so it seems like it's the only thing that people can do, but there's many more. You can do Flame Blast, and then the other thing you can do is just potentially say, hey, maybe Searing Bond's fine, we should buff some of the other things. I would love to level up as other abilities, but it's just they are not as strong as Searing Bond while leveling until you get them all linked up, and some of them are harder to gear up. Searing Bond is not as hard to gear up. Once I get a lot of you know, currency, I can just do whatever I want with links and stuff like that. So that's the main thing, is that it's the least gear dependent thing to do. So that's why you're seeing it, and it's designed to be a late game support skill. You're supposed to be able to use Searing Bond with only 2 links in the late game with like some other skill. Like I'm using it with Detonate Dead. I use it, I place it down with a remote mine, and I run away, and I have that doing damage while I'm doing Detonate Dead. And I think that's what they wanted. So that's my thought on it.
All right, so the next question we have here is by Only Plays Lee Sin. They're both to you, Colby. The first one is, have you gotten any specific Exile strategies, especially when you hit around 85, assuming you have the gear that you have now?
So what I wrote down here is that essentially there's not pretty much with the Zeri fight, we know that she does a lot of Flame Blast stuff and Storm Calls. So I think it's just going to be the same strategy you would use with any other spellcaster boss, such as the Crematorium boss. You're going to need to get lots of super high max resists and potentially spell block. You know, you can also use like Might Never Matter and Arctic Armor. Pretty much all of this extremely tanky auras and items. That's pretty much going to be the strategy for beating her. And I think that's the same thing you would see with any other bosses, I think.
The other question he asked you is, how do you think the patch will affect races? Will the meta change, or will we see the regular Leap Slam Spectral Throw meta?
As far as races are concerned, I would love to talk a lot about races, but we haven't even seen the new race season. We don't know what the new signature race is, or if they're adding new race things. Like, they added Descent Champions for the last 4 months. They may add more cool stuff to this one. So in terms of race meta, I would like to have a whole podcast on that later. But for now, the only thing I can predict is that Marauders are probably going to get a little bit more popular, and it's going to be easier to level up early game with all three of the casters. You got Templar, Witch, and Shadow all buffed elemental. Their early games are considerably improved, so you may see more of those characters in the top brackets rather than all just Rangers. Now that they've nerfed Spectral Throw, we probably won't see Ranger, the top 10, all six of them being Rangers. At least that's what I'm hoping. So that's the only changes I can predict for now, and without going to a longer discussion, which we don't need to do now until we see more discussion on what they've added for this racing season.
Giuseppe asks the next question. What are the consequences of the market because of all the deaths? That's a good question. We're seeing a shift that wasn't really seen before when we had Onslaught and what's it called? Nemesis, right. People were able to level and progress fluently, and those items that were once awesome for leveling up teetered off really fast. So you had stuff that were worth like 3 chaos, 5 chaos at the beginning, and then like 4 days later, it immediately would drop to like an Alk or a Scour or Fuse, very, very cheap. However, since we are throwing so many bodies into standard leagues, these items are still in high demand, and thus they've been retaining their value, if not increasing, with the amount of deaths. So we are seeing a much slower progression, and those low-level items are still holding very strong in the economy on Invasion. That being said, I'm not sure. I'm sure it's dropping drastically, those leveling items in Ambush, because people are getting so much currency, able to roll so many items and progress with great gear. So we're definitely seeing a different kind of market meta in this current state, in this current league.
All right, the next question was asked by Wonton Giku again. What do you think of the current state of Viper Strike, and how it can be brought back into viability? If you guys don't mind if I answer this one, I actually played one in Nemesis.
Go ahead, man.
Viper Strike, it can be viable. However, it requires a lot of love to be viable. The current state of Viper Strike requires 4 key wheels: the Corruption Wheel, Method and Madness Wheel, Entropy Wheel, and Growth and Decay Wheel to even be viable. Lastly, it scales best with gems, plus the level to gems. So unfortunately, once you get a level 20 Viper Strike, unless you have a level 2 Empower or paired with a +1/+2 dagger, that means +1 to all gems dagger, and a +1 to melee gems dagger, weapon that can use Viper Strike, not just dagger. You're kind of SOL, to be honest. Viper Strike just requires too much love and too specific set of gear to even be viable. What do I think they need to do to change that? Make more options. Make it, instead of just leveling it via plus to gems, they can maybe make spell damage affect it, or make a plus to chaos damage on rings and stuff. But in the current state of the game, Viper Strike, I wouldn't even dare try an Invasion. You need so much gear, at least a level 2 Empower.
Yeah, I think they could use more supports that work with chaos damage, that or more uniques. There are a couple of uniques that work, I think, with chaos damage, but overall it's
I really feel
overall
like
it just needs more. There's a few more things that it needs added. Just like in the past, if you wanted to do melee before melee splash was added, it was a lot. There was way less options. I think we just need to give them time to, release some more options for us, essentially.
Right. I think the build enabling, the problem I have with Viper Strike and Puncture and stuff like that is the fact that they cannot leech, which is huge. If they had a unique that does 20% of your dot damage, regen as life, that would make it much more interesting. But there's too much of a drawback. You need to be overall super tanky to avoid damage in the first place. And Viper and Puncture is not really going to bring your life back by actively attacking.
Right.
So I think that's...
You're going to need regen, basically. Regen and flasks.
Right. Regen, flask, mitigation, and that's often going to forego lots of damage potential. But if they just threw in one unique, like a ring that converts dot damage into life leech, then I think they would be in a good spot.
That would be a really interesting unique, and make it not like Chevron's rare. Make it like Blood Dance rare. My favorite unique in the game. All right, third prophecy here. You want? Go ahead, Hedgie.
I was just going to read the next question. Third prophecy says, or asks, what do you think about the your most exciting moment in Invasion is, or so far? Question for everybody. So let's go around the table. Colby?
Let's see. That's a hard one because there's a few, but I think the most, initially the first exciting thing was when I just beat Dominus solo, and I was like, yes, you're down. And then like whenever I was rushing ahead, you know, and getting up to the first, that was the most exciting because of how hard the league was. That was my most exciting moment initially, and then after that, just finding a Searing Touch and actually being able to buy a 5-link. That was exciting. So I think that's what I like about this game, just finding that one item that enables you to either use it or sell to really get your build going. Or just like getting that, hitting that pinnacle of progression to where you're like, I'm home free, I'm in the ledge, I can farm now, or I'm home free, I have rarity and I'm farming piety. You know, that's my exciting moments.
Most exciting moment in Invasion for me, that goes along with man moding. Whenever I get up to a boss, I'm like, this guy's gonna wreck my crap. Screw it, doing it, man mode it. You know, you plan your attack, you run away, clear his ads first, and when you kill him with just barely enough health, even though you're extremely tanky, that is, oh, I love it. That feel you get. That's why I play hardcore. Not to, you don't make a hardcore character thinking you're going to live forever. You make a hardcore character knowing you're going to die, but to push your limits. I love that feeling personally, the adrenaline rush. How about you, Hedgie?
My most exciting moment was probably a period of time. Being at the top 50 ladder for a couple days was definitely exciting while, you know, holding a full-time job and, you know, on a regular sleep schedule. That was definitely a very exciting moment, only to be trumped by alt-tabbing, changing my playlists and windows, and dying to the Flicker boss. That was very upsetting, and it was a mistake that I promised never to do again. I was 9 levels over the zone. I got complacent. I killed 80% of the zone. The spider walked up and EK'd me and flickered me to death. Killed all my totems, and it was GG. I didn't even get a chance. It was heartbreaking. Stupid mistake.
That spider is scary business, man. All right. Next question was asked by Mibu for the win. Question: how do you feel about? Great. Hold on a second. How do you feel about the length of the leagues? It seems like around the 3-month mark, the player base takes a huge dive and the incentive to continue playing drops off. Any suggestions that GGG could fix this? Yes. I have been saying this since day one. They need to include some sort of incentives. A t-shirt is cool and all. The challenge system is great, but maybe incorporate 20 challenges, and then every 4 challenges you complete, you get something like a legacy microtransaction. Make it, you know, simple enough for the point where you still enjoy, but it's not like overwhelming, like such as the Seraph armor set. So I think that would keep people playing longer, as well as, you know, hey, you hit level 100 in Invasion, here you get this awesome looking pair of pants for your Templar, or this cape here for your Witch. I think that would keep a lot of people interested for the 4 months. And not only would it be good for the player and the community, it would also be good from a business standpoint for GGG. You know, more streamers advertising the game, more money coming in through microtransactions, just because that's an extra month of people sticking around rather than dropping off. How do you guys feel about it?
Well, the 4-month leagues are pretty much important for GGG because developing the game, they need time to develop new content. If we had leagues sooner, they're going to be rushing out new content that may not be nearly as exciting. This was a huge update, in my opinion. There was so much really cool stuff that they added for this. And think about just the few bosses that are imbalanced right now. If they had more time to balance those out, maybe we would have less frustration in terms of, like, maybe those 2 bosses, for example. So if we had less time, we may have way more issues than we have now. So I think that the 4-month is fine for the case of GGG. What they could do potentially is like you said with the challenges, maybe have like a couple of challenges for the first 2 months, and then have a new set of challenges for the last 2 months of the league.
That's a good idea. That's a very good
something
idea.
like that. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of little small ideas, but I think 4 months is fine. they just need to, look at something to do halfway through the season.
Piggybacking on that, and looking at the achievements, I honestly feel like it's going to be next to impossible to do the have the Veil items, considering like just to play on pure and invasion league and expect to get all those Atziri items. I think that's going to be a pipe dream. I think that's only going to be able to be accomplished on ambush. It's kind of disheartening because my passion is with the new hardcore leagues. I don't know how I feel about that challenge in particular, but all the other challenges seem to be okay. 4 months, I'd be honestly surprised if anybody completed that challenge in a pure invasion, with the exception of that level 90 character on ambush. As far as the level 90 character, I think that's a lot more interesting than making a bunch of tunes, banging them out. You actually have to contribute to the economy to like hit 90 and actually try. And yeah, I just really am discouraged about those having the Veil items. Those Atziri items are just going to be,
Yeah, well, hopefully,
on...
I haven't looked at the list of them. How rare are some of them is what I want to know. Like, how hard is it really going to be to get all of them? Hopefully, if it's less difficult than the last leagues, the last league really felt like you had to almost RMT or multi-box bot for half the 2 months or whatever to get all the currency for that. If this one is easier than that, then that's at least a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I honestly feel like it's just going to be like in an ambush league. It's just going to be a matter of people exchanging the gear and, hey, you're my friend. Here, take this gear and go kill it yourself. It's going to be done so quickly and promptly, and I would be tipped off to my hat to the first person who kills that on invasion, no doubt.
Question here for Colby. What do you think about Vaal Cold Snap? Is it 10-second freeze enemies plus 45% freeze duration from passive tree OP?
I don't know how I feel about Vaal Cold Snap itself as a gem. Cold Snap in general is a really cool spell. Now that they have like Ramirez out, you can do a self-cast Cold Snap, and I'm more excited about the new belt, which gives you extra freeze chance and life leech on freezing, because you can pretty much get up really close to 100% freeze chance with Cold Snap, and you can really just make an amazing build with that. We've already seen the self-cast Cold Snap build work out really well in the past before that belt was added, so that makes it even better. Could do some testing with the new Cold Snap that's going to be really sweet on like a trap, and the main problem I see with it is just building up the souls to use it. So the spell itself is pretty cool. I like it, but I don't know if you're going to be able to justify using it over another setup of gems. I
thought of an interesting idea with it. It has a 100% chance to freeze, correct? Am I wrong?
No.
No, it doesn't. Okay, my apologies. I thought of maybe turning it into like a Cold of Fire and making a burn, using it in a burn spec. It has a cooldown that you could still freeze with it, but as well it does, a lot of AoE damage and perhaps maybe even burn with it. Same thing with the Vaal Ice Nova. It's just my take on it.
Yeah, I believe it's the same damage as the as a regular Cold Snap. So, yeah.
My apologies. I thought it had a higher chance to freeze. That's just me not knowing.
Okay.
Well, yeah, okay, never mind. I see it here. I'm reading it. It says it always freezes enemies. Pretty much the duration of the freeze, I believe, is supposed to be based on their the damage that you do with it. I would have to test it some more, to be honest, overall. But it's a cool idea. Throw it on a trap and freeze everything. The main thing is that if you're going to be doing freeze, then you would want to do it consistently.
Yeah.
It's not consistent enough, I think, in order to be a good utility skill. Unless it's just really effective against bosses, but then again, it's a huge AoE thing. It's like it's used for packs, in which case you can just use a regular Cold Snap with increased AoE and LE Prolif, and that's better because you can just cast it once and it's good. Anyways, that's my thoughts.
Casalt asks, what do you think about the barrage buff? I know Zeno did a build on it, but do Colby or Hedgie think that it's super viable DPS now? Colby?
Yeah, from what I understand, Barrage was really good before with once you hit like a certain level of crit, I don't know, like 40-50% crit chance. And so I think it's just overall better for crit builds, because from what I understand, the way it works is you hit one barrage. If you crit, then all the rest of your attacks are going to crit, and this is why I used it on my Cast and Crit Cool Rain character. So in general, it's a buff for Cast and Crit Cool Rain, and it's a buff for high crit builds, in my opinion. I don't know about versus using Frenzy. I think it's just going to take a little bit of testing again, and maybe more preference too, since Barrage makes you stay still for a little bit, whereas Frenzy buffs both your single target and your other skills DPS from the attack speed. So I don't know. I like it. It's a cool spell. I'm not sure about the differences.
The interesting thing about Barrage and Point Blank is if you go Point Blank and have Chain, if you go in melee range and hit with your 4 barrages, for example, and then it chains to a mob nearly off screen, it keeps the initial 50% more damage. So that's something to think about in a crit barrage build now as well.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm okay with the damage. The biggest drawback for me is like what Colby was saying, was being rooted like a multi-strike. I honestly think you need insane amount of attack speed to support it, because in an invasion type league, you need to be mobile. Anytime you're rooted is time to die. It's a thing that, you know, the more and more I watch fights, the more and more I see mechanics and hasting mobs. The ability to not move and be quick about it is going to be a huge deficit. Wanding in general, I feel like if you are going to wand, reduce mana, lightning warp is a must. Being able to get out of those sticky situations before they happen, prime movement, real estate type thing. So while it might be good damage, I feel like it's a little bit high risk.
Yeah, mobility is big in this league, because that's why I rolled Adrenaline Flask, and I'm pretty sure it's what helped save me in a lot of situations. As soon as I see one of those bosses, if I think it's going to be something sketchy, I pop my Adrenaline Flask and I get out, and that move speed is insane. So just having, you know, innate move speed, I think that's going to make move speed boots even more valuable, and then getting move speed from the tree, potentially, who knows. So yeah, the barrage thing, rooting yourself, it's sketch. Let's see, the next question is for Hegemony. It's about will the increased difficulty how will the increased difficulty and decreased players affect the economy in Hedgecraft?
Honestly, Hedgecraft does not change too much. The opportunity is still there. The conversions are still there. Rewarding players that play the game and crafting with Aux is still there, and the demand for flasks are even going to be greater. So I think the increased difficulty is definitely a bonus as far as people farming and exclusively trading their Alex to Chaos. I haven't seen any shortage of that, but yeah, it'll still remain, and if not be stronger, because of the demand of Flask and the rip-tastic, you know, massacres we've seen. To Colby, how do you think the patch will change the racing meta? Will we see some other options in Leaps Lands? I think we've already answered that one, right?
Yeah, we pretty much went over that. Basically, they buffed the, you know, spellcaster and stuff, and we'll talk about it more later on another podcast, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a good one.
What no Gitu or no what is it? No Giku? Do you guys feel like the strong boxes artificially speed up the ambush economy? Can Veil Orbs alone counter that with highly specific items? I'll start this one. I feel like the ambush economy, I kind of see what the developers were doing. They're trying to give people reasons to leave their massive standard stashes. You know, people are like, oh man, I'm going to have such a problem leaving all my orbs, you know, from this, you know, standard softcore league and going to a new one. The benefits are outrageous. Like they're exciting. They're, you know, high in demand, and I feel like they're trying to get those people, you know, that are on the fence of like leaving their stash and coming in and trying out a new thing, that they don't have to worry too much about item progression and the whole perfect means perfect, being able to find those gems, level them up to 20, and then, you know, Veil Orb, YOLO, you know, just like that sense of feeling and that crafting, like Zeno was saying, it's kind of like a crafting league. I definitely see how they were doing that. Overall, I think it's a little too fast. The serial kills will come, you know, much quicker than invasion, if at all. You know, like it'll just be dominant, and then I feel like people are just going to be trading sets of gear to their friends. So if you are interested in being the first, you know, to kill Itsiri on ambush, then you probably should make a lot of friends, because there's no penalty for dying. If I were to let someone borrow something on invasion and he were to die on Itsiri, he would owe me big time. But yeah, that's how I feel about that.
All right, the next question, Hedgie, how did the patch change the PvP meta, and how can we get more people to play PvP? That was asked by Trizix.
PvP meta, Righteous Fire being nerfed, the arena. I haven't really explored it too much. I just know about some of the changes that have happened. It's in the right direction. Overall, balances are coming. We've been promised that other gems are going to be looked at. We knew this from previous podcasts. It's an ongoing thing. They're just getting their feet wet, and they're soon going to tap into the community feedback with the upcoming beta tournaments and stuff like that. But it's too early to tell. That'll be discussed more so probably by me in the upcoming podcast that we do.
All right, we got 2 more questions left, and before we answer those, I just want to let you know that the podcast is coming to an end soon. When I take down the stream, stick around, because we're going to give away 2 microtransactions for people tuning in. So again, thank you everybody for tuning in. Let's get these last 2 questions underway. Another one for Hedgie. How will the increase...
We just answered that one.
We did? Whoops. All right, one from me by Boost Coder. What do you think about Elemental Hit Gem? Since we are on Elemental era, is it a good choice for melee? Elemental Hit, as awesome as the the damage is on it, first off, the tooltip, it doesn't provide the accurate amount of damage. Obviously, if it would take a lot of coding to provide each elemental's DPS. I think the biggest problem with Elemental Hit, though, is the mana cost. It's just so high. Most attacks cost upwards near... Frenzy would probably be the next most expensive one, and it's still not nearly as much as Elemental Hit. So it requires an astronomical amount of mana, which is just not even possible, or blood magic. And with blood magic, you're going to really hurt yourself, so you're going to need a good amount of leech. And with the recent nerfs to leech, I just don't think Elemental Hit is viable until they lower the mana cost. Just being honest with you.
And this will probably be our last question of the podcast. This one's directed to Colby by Wonton no Giku. What is your opinion of the Empower, Enlighten, Enhance series?
I actually really like Empower. It opens up possibility to do some really cool stuff with a lot of other gems, and a nice little interaction with the +1 gem items. As far as Enhance, that's also really cool for, I think, curses is what I've learned. For certain curses, you can really make curses way more powerful. I'm not sure what else you would really want to use it on.
Arctic Armor.
Immortal Call.
Yep.
Immortal Call, the percent is the same as a level. So
yeah, so there's a few things like that. So there's just a few edge cases. So there's some cool stuff you can do with Enhance. And then the Enlightened Gem is just overall like for people who are wanting to make currency by selling active skills that are leveled, I guess. That's the only thing I think of. Or if you're leveling gems for a new character and you want to like flip them back to 20 quality, that's pretty much the only thing I can see for that. Basically, they allowed people to have a way to level up gems faster. So that's really all I got to say about Enlighten, I guess, is that it's like, hey, you can level up faster. That's cool. Okay.
And to piggyback on that, I feel like if you're on Invasion League, Vaal Orbing a level 2 Empower is probably a good thing to do, because getting into level 3 and expecting to stay alive is probably a dream. So getting it to level 2 isn't too hard, and getting that +1 on top of that and being done with it, you get that level 3 Empower. I think that'll be very interesting and good change, or a good thing. Like the reward is there, the risk reward. So I would suggest get your Empower to level 2, Vaal Orbit, hoping that you get that +1, and if you didn't, try leveling up another one. But getting it to level 2 isn't too bad. Getting it to level 3 is a nightmare. So
rest in peace, those Empowers that were trying to turn to level 4 but got killed. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
All right. So with this being said, before we go, you guys have any closing comments you want to say? Colby or Hedgie?
Yes, my remaining microtransaction pack, I'm going to be giving away what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a keyword on my status at some point in the day, and then you have to go to my that particular YouTube video and type that keyword. First person to type it will get the microtransaction pack. That's how I'm going to be giving away mine.
Would you mind putting the details on your stream so people can, in case they didn't catch that?
Yeah. I'll do it sometime today or tomorrow at random.
And Colby?
Sounds good. So I'm going to be doing 2 giveaways. I've got one I'm going to be giving away on Twitter within the next 30 minutes. So for anyone who follows me, it's just at Colby Cheese with a Z, not an S. You should be able to find that. And I'll be giving that away at a random time. And then the other one I'll be just giving away here right afterwards on my stream. I'll just do the little giveaway box thing so I can type it in, and that should be pretty much it, I think.
All right, and then for my last one, I'll be giving away tonight during my night stream. I usually log on about 8 to 10 Mountain Time, so GMT, that would be about, I can't even do the math right now, but 8 to 10 Mountain Time, I'm GMT minus 7, and then I will be giving away during that time frame, so if you tune into my stream then. With that being said, I would like to thank GGG again for allowing us to do this, and thank you for the donations for the 8 microtransaction packs. They're a good company, and a lot of gaming companies think about the dollar sign. It's very evident that GGG cares about the player base than the dollar sign. So we should all appreciate them more and continue to build this community what it is. Secondly, I'd like to thank Twitch again for allowing this podcast to even be possible. And lastly, thanks Mods for moderating and taking care of the channel. And thanks for Hedgie and Colby for coming by. If you guys are interested in seeing this podcast again or passing on to your friends, we'll have this podcast loaded as a VOD on my stream, as well as Colby Cheese's YouTube. Again, it's Colby Cheese with a Z. So that will be going up, in a few moments, I would assume. We're going to stomp that out as soon as we're done with this. And last but not least, we're going to have 2 podcast microtransaction giveaways. So once I take down the stream, stick around, guys. Any other comments you guys got before we go?
Nope, looking forward to the next podcast.
Yeah, I look forward to doing it again, and I want to thank the viewers that came out and watched this over the race. I knew it wasn't the same time slot, but I want to appreciate you guys for your support. GGG for supplying us and backing the podcast with microtransactions. So big shout out to them, and big shout out to Twitch for being the venue of this place.
It's always about the viewers. You guys keep us alive. Without you, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be doing this. So thank you again for keeping.
And thanks to the mods that kept the chat clean and kept it organized. Big ups to you. Last
but not least, we're going to be doing another one of these in 2 weeks. We're going to try and keep them, bi-monthly every 2 weeks, and we'll have more details to come on that, and we'll all advertise it. So thank you again for tuning in, and that's all we really got.
Take care, guys.
Thanks. See you guys later, and good luck.